Well, always you wish you had more time with your children. Yes, like many times, I would leave before anybody was out of bed, and many times come home when everybody was in bed and never see anybody. So that was just common practice, and when the weather's good, that's when you roll. That's when you work. So hours were, like you say, 12, 14. Like lots of times there'd be some days I wouldn't have any sleep for 2 or 3 nights because that dictated that the weather maybe was going to change. So you had to keep on going and get the crop in the ground.
Did that get your attention? This is episode 9 of Tyler Dawe Unscripted, and today we have Sarah and Paul Parkinson, a local farming family. This family has been farming in Guelph, Township for over 200 years. We have had a phenomenal discussion today, and I can't wait for you to hear it. And we are talking all about tariffs, technology, community, and family as it relates to the farming business, and I can't wait for you guys to take a listen. If you have any questions, drop a link, subscribe. We would love your support. Thanks, guys, and enjoy the show. Today we've got Sarah and Paul Parkinson with us. They are a longstanding farming family in our community. And today we're going to talk about the evolution of Paul's family all the way up to Sarah, okay, who's a female in the industry, who probably has their struggles as well, and we're going to talk about that. But we do want to get the story, and I've known these guys for a very long time. I actually worked for Paul, okay, so he was probably one of the best bosses I had, and I'd probably think that he would probably say I was probably one of the best
One of the best
employees that he had. Yeah, so at least we're on the same page there. And I specifically, like, Paul has 4 kids, okay? He's got 3 daughters, okay? And they're all beautiful. And when we were younger, we would always be trying to go out with them or ask them out to parties, but we'd always hang out at the ball diamond at the back corner of the fence. And one summer, Paul came up to me, and he was walking down the fence line, and I could see him coming, so I knew he wanted to talk to one of us, and I thought, what's this little shit want? And he came up, and he says, your brother Kyle says that you're looking for a job. Remember that?
Yep.
And I said, yeah, no, I am. And he says, okay, do you know anything about farming? And I said, no. He says, do you know how to drive a tractor? And I said, no. And he says, okay, meet me at the yard at 7 in the morning. Maybe it was earlier than that.
No, it was 7.
About 7? And so basically, it was interesting because I had no prerequisites for farming whatsoever. And then he hired me. So he was either extremely desperate, but it was kind of neat because that situation has led us here today. So anyways, with that being said, Paul's going to tell his story today, and I'm super honored to have him and Sarah here, okay, because they're great people. So Paul, tell us about farming. Tell us about how'd the family get started? We're in Wellington County. We're in Aramasa Township.
Okay, so back it's in 2024 was our 200th year of being here in Canada, and Joseph settled just outside of where Guelph Lake is now.
Okay.
So he came from England, settled in the U.S. and didn't get along very well in the U.S. and so he didn't get along with his neighbors, so they sent his sons up, and he had 7 sons, I believe. And they settled in Aramasa Township here. So it's over 200 years we've been here. I'm a 6th generation farmer. Sarah's 7, and our grandchildren are 8th generation farmers in Aramasa Township. So the farm, the original farm, is part of what was expropriated, but Cliff Parkinson still lives on the original farm that was settled.
So I mean, I guess that's interesting. Normally, in my business, when people don't like their neighbors, they move cities or neighborhoods. Your family moved countries. Okay, so that's interesting. Secondly, when you talk about the Guelph Lakes area, so that was expropriated to create the reservoir, right?
Correct.
Now, whereabouts was the original farm located?
So the original farm is on the corner of Jones Baseline and 124. So it's on the southeast corner.
Now that takes a jog, right? Now,
Yeah.
it didn't always take a jog, though, right?
No. So it's on the south side of the 24 on if you're heading into Guelph, it's on the left-hand side just before you get to Jones Baseline. It's a big stone house. It still stands.
And there's the original structure still there, is it not?
Yes, correct. The
Yeah.
original house is still there.
So then the highway was there, but the property on the other side of the road too, or was
No,
it
it was just on the highway moved to the south.
Okay.
So the highway moved and it was expropriated.
So the highway was on the other side of the farm.
No, the highway was on the north side of the farm still.
Okay.
It's just the frontage it's less frontage than what it used to be.
Okay. And then how many farms did the family have in the area?
I think originally they had two. They had another farm to the east of that, and then they started buying land after that. The sons and daughters started buying farms after that, and I can't tell you the exact number. There was a lot of them.
Okay.
A lot of them.
And then those parcels were original 200-acre parcels from the crown, right?
100 acres is what
were they?
what they got originally.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the farmhouse that you grew up in.
No, that is the original farmhouse that Joseph came to. Okay. Our farmhouse was right across on the north side of Highway 124, adjacent, right across the road from it. That's where I was born and raised.
That's where I'm mixing that up. So then that farmhouse now is torn down.
It's gone. Yes.
Would it be underwater now?
The farmhouse itself would not have, but all the flats down that we used to farm are all underwater. Correct.
So the whole lake was all upfield.
Yep.
With the fence lines and
everything. There was a creek going through it, but it was originally just farmland with a creek going through it. Now it's all underwater. But our farm was up the hill a little bit. The house and the barn were up the hill a little bit. So the original house and barn there's trees planted on it now.
Okay, so then take us back. So then Joseph comes here. He has the stone farmhouse, right? And he has how many kids?
I think it was seven sons he had back then.
And the sons came up a little bit before him.
Correct, to Homestead.
So one of those sons is your great-grandfather?
Oh, great.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you got 7 sons. You have relatives. Like if anybody's from our area, okay, Parkinson is like, they're all over the place.
Correct.
So you can't date a Parkinson because you don't know if you're related to them.
No.
Now, but I guess going forward, so then you have like some people decide to keep the farming tradition going and other people don't.
Correct.
You grew up in a farming household.
Yes, our family, my parents were like they were just 100-acre farm, and they had animals and crops. That's what they did, maple syrup. So they were just a mixed farming, I guess is what you would call them back in that day.
And then how many kids did they have?
We had 5 kids. There's 5 of us.
And your parents' names?
Warren and Jean.
Warren and Jean. So then Warren and Jean had they had the house. How many bedrooms did that house have?
Back in the day, we had 4 bedrooms at that point in time. That's all there was. And no heat upstairs in the house.
What about plumbing?
Plumbing, there was a washroom downstairs, and that was it.
With like running water?
Running water, yes.
Okay. But when they had, like, I guess when Warren and Jean first bought that, would they have had plumbing?
No, there was no running water. No.
And Grandma moved from the city. Like, she was a city girl. So she moved out to the farm.
Was?
Yes. Yep. They met, Grandpa was 17 and Grandma was 15, I think, right? They met at a dance.
Yeah.
And she was a city girl, and Grandpa went up and asked to dance with her, and then that was
the start of it. Yeah.
So she moved from the city out to the country, and
like
she
the
used
city,
to
like Guelph, or
Guelph.
like
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Guelph, okay.
She used to talk about how they'd be out in the fields working, and then all these people, like neighbors, they used to all work together. It was more of a community back then. And she'd have to cook meals for like all these men would come in for lunch, and she'd be like, yeah, it was pretty overwhelming for her, I think, in the beginning, and then 5 kids, and yeah.
So I guess growing up, I mean, obviously it's a different time, but it's a different attitude too. Because Sarah and I are very similar age, and I grew up in town, and she grew up on the farm. When you're growing up on the farm, it's not like like farming is the life, right? Like it's not like I'm doing this as a hobby. Like you're always there. You have to tend to everything that's right there on the farm. So tell us a little bit more about that, because like, I mean, the responsibilities, as like for me, I didn't have to go out and do chickens or, change mink pens, the cages on the mink pens, and get fleas and all that stuff. Like, I never did that. But
well, you did that summer.
But tell us, that's what happens. And note to self: if you guys are thinking about working for a farmer and you get to drive the tractors and all the machinery is great, once the fields are planted, there's downtime. And if you want to stay there, you have to do certain jobs. Okay, you'll learn. I'm not going to go through them, but you'll learn. But so tell us, Paul, like, so you would obviously go to your high school was Guelph, right?
Guelph, yes.
So when you were on the farm, you had certain responsibilities that you guys had to do, correct?
Yeah, lots of times we were doing chores before we went to school. Pretty well every day we had to do chores in the morning and at night. And of course weekends, it's 24/7 on a farm when you got livestock. So it was nonstop work. And going to high school in Guelph made it a little bit more convenient because my older brother could drive, so that meant we could go later and come home earlier from school. Yeah. So it just meant more work is what it meant.
So your dad was like, you guys get a truck, but then he gets you a little bit more.
Correct.
Okay, that's interesting. So when you're doing that, when you see the other kids that aren't, that don't have the after school chores and things like that, like, what are your thoughts? Because everything took longer back then, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess you kind of thought maybe you were missing out at something, but our parents made sure that if we had wanted to do something extracurricular, that we had the opportunity to do it. So my brothers and myself, we all wrestled. Yeah. We all played ball. We all played hockey. So we were given the opportunity to do those things.
Yeah. So you were still active. It wasn't just farm.
No.
Did you know other families that were, though?
Yes, I have cousins that didn't do anything except work.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So then, I mean, and then if we go like when, like, my dad's a little bit older than you, but when he can remember picking rocks in fields, and it was like a gravy boat, and he would be throwing rocks into the whatever
a steel boat.
A steel boat, yeah.
Steel boat. Throw the rocks onto the steel boat. Throw them off.
That's right. So when I had told him that I was picking rocks, in his head, that's what he was thinking. And then he drove by me one day on Fifth Line and pulled over, and he's like, "He let you drive that thing?" Right? So was that the type of stuff that you were having to do when you were younger?
Yep. Yes, for sure. Baling hay, I had to stand up to push the clutch to, and that's how young I was. So I was probably 9 or 10 when we started driving a tractor to bale hay. So yes, you were expected to do that. You had to do it. That's just the way of life back then.
So then you have 5 kids?
5 of us, yes.
3 boys and 2 girls, right?
Correct.
Okay. So then out of the 3 boys, how many got into farming?
My older brother and myself were into farming. And my older brother worked with my dad until Dad retired. And then they sold the mink about 4 years ago. They got rid of the mink.
Okay. And then your younger brother?
My middle brother, Tom, he had his own business going, an antenna business going.
Okay, and that's right. That was in Rockwood, wasn't it?
Right.
Now, and then, so, it's interesting, because if you're forced to work like that, okay, you might, some side might say, okay, I'm never going to do this again once I'm grown up and I'm on my own. Did you ever have those thoughts, or did you kind of did you enjoy it?
No, I enjoyed it, and we were actively involved in it, in what was going on at the farm. So when I was in grade 10, I had pigs, like I was raising pigs myself. And then as soon as I got out of high school, we didn't go to college or university and nothing like that. Then we were actively. I had some barns rented, 2 barns rented, 40 sows, farrow to finish, and a couple 100 acres of cash crop. And that was just something that just worked in when we grew up on the farm. That was what we were expected to do.
But that's how you could see an income from it, right? Like you have your own pigs, you have your own cash crop, and then all of a sudden you could see that, okay, there is money to be made, or there is a future here. Well,
there's a future. I'm not sure there was a lot of money made, but there was a future, and that's what I wanted to do. So that's what we continued on with. So
like for Tom, he just decided not to.
He wasn't really interested in it, and maybe that's to your point that maybe he'd had enough of it by then.
Yeah.
But for Johnny and I, we were very interested in keeping going at what we were doing.
Now Johnny had mink, and you did cash crop.
Correct.
And I always give Lynn credit for the mink at your place. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, that was, I had an opportunity to be in the mink, to be a partnership in the mink with my brother and my dad, and I chose not to. And then subsequently, I married a girl, and that's what she did. She had mink.
Funny, eh? Okay, so how old were you when you left the house?
I was in 79, so I was 22. That's when we were married.
So you left the house when you were married?
Correct.
And Lynn was living Mill Road?
Correct.
So then how old was Lynn?
Same age, 22.
You're the same?
Yes.
Okay, so then you got together. Where did you move from there?
We moved to where we live now on the 5th line of Aramasa, just above Brucedale. We bought that property in August, and we were married in 79. In winter of 79.
Before you were married,
we bought it before we were married, and then moved there when we were married.
Uncle Rob lived there.
Yeah.
Before they.
So, Lynn's not here. So, if anybody out there knows Lynn, they know that I'm gonna give Paul a little hit here because she's way out of his league, 100% out of his league. So if they were, if they were together now, she would just walk right by him. But great father, great man. Tell us a little bit about Lynn quickly.
Lynn, she's a great person to be with. She's a hard worker. When in the early 70s, then I moved on to and became involved in another large farm, an elevator. So to get that farm going, and then we formed a partnership, and then we actually formed a company in 78. But there was a lot of long hours, a lot of time spent away from home, and Lynn was looking after 4 kids into the 90s when Todd was born. I was very seldom around, so she looked after the kids, and she had mink of her own, so she was a solid anchor at our farm.
Yeah. Right, because you could, if you had, it's all about the spouse. If you had a different spouse, it could have gone totally...
Absolutely. Could have been a lot different. Could have turned out a lot different. Yeah. Okay. So very easy to get along with, very easy to live with. Yes.
Good. And she hasn't left you yet?
Not yet.
Okay, good. Okay, so just take us back for a second about the university, okay? You didn't go to university. At that time, when Sarah and I were in high school, if you didn't go to university, you might as well have been going nowhere. And it's not the same sentiment today because, the trades are a little bit more involved now, and the money that is coming from there is a little bit bigger. And so, just talk about that. Was that a common practice for kids finish high school to go work on the farm or start their own businesses, or was it university, or did you feel like you should have gone to university?
No, I don't regret not going to university or college. Back when I went to high school, the trades were big, so there was a lot of shops. So we had a basics understanding of electricity, woodworking, and welding. I ended up with a CWB welding certificate that I could weld pipelines. So when we came out of high school, a lot of the guys were already, and a lot of the girls, they were able to do typing, stenograph, and those types of things. So they were already set up to go to work outside, outside of farming. It's just that I just really wanted to go back to the farm, even though I didn't. I had no university degree or anything like that. I just wanted to go back to the farm and work. And I'm glad I did.
Now, it's interesting you talked about typing and stenographs. We are here. But at this, we're going to touch on this in a second, but Lynn was in farming her whole life, right?
Well, so she did work.
She worked,
actually.
She worked until we were married. She worked at Rockwell International.
She was like a secretary,
basically a secretary at Rockwell,
like that. So she did actually go from high school into that.
Yeah, she went right into it, and then when we decided, my parents were mink ranchers. Her parents were third generation mink ranch, or her parents were second generation mink ranchers. Her grandparents were one of the first 4 in Canada to have mink. So fur-bearing animals were part of Lynn's life. She grew up with them. So when we got married, we decided that she wanted to have a ranch, her own mink ranch. So we actively went out and bought a place on the 5th line that actually had a couple of mink sheds so that we could start out with.
Wow. Okay.
It wasn't easy because we were mating mink and doing chores
And they stink.
at night.
Yeah.
Oh,
If
man,
anybody
they stink.
doesn't know, yeah.
So then you graduated high school, you started farming, you got married, you started an elevator. So you basically tell us more about that.
Well, in the early 70s, then I went to work for a fellow that needed somebody to drive his combine, and I was kind of like you. I'd never driven a combine, except for the first day I got there, I got sat on it.
Yeah.
I didn't know what he was doing, and he left. So it was,
So
learn.
we are more alike
Yeah,
than we think.
we think, yes. So then we expanded land and got up to several thousand acres, and then decided to build an elevator. And then in 1999, I chose to go back home and keep on farming with a land base of our own. And so that's where we are now, still our own land
So
base.
how many acres were you farming before with the elevator?
I think we're up around 6,000 acres, plus we had custom work.
Okay.
We did a lot of custom work.
And then for those of you guys out there that don't understand what custom work is.
Well, custom work is you're doing a farmer, or doesn't need to be a farmer. It's somebody that owns a farm would hire us to come in and plant, do the tillage, plant, harvest, spraying, all of that stuff that is required.
And then they would reap.
Then they would sell it, and then hopefully they would make money out of that. Yeah.
But they would pay you hourly or however.
Correct,
It works.
by the acre. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then you went on your own. Okay. And how many acres did you start off with versus how many acres are you now?
We started in around 2,200 acres, and we're right now at about 3,500 acres of our own that we, 1,250 are owned, and the rest is rented. Mm-hmm. And then we still are in the custom business, so we still do a lot of work in Milton for people and some local around our area too.
So then with, I guess like we'll hit a little bit more on my genre, real estate. Like what have you seen? Like, I mean, like buying a farm, okay, then versus now. Like when I look at, excuse me, when I bought my first property, right, the values were lower, but at the time I thought, holy shit, 200,000, you know? But like, is it relative, or do you think that like, is it just gone through the roof?
I would say it's gone through the roof. Correct. Yes, it has. It when we first started farming, we tried to buy a farm, Lynn and I, and we got turned down by Farm Credit. Okay, so we had to go and borrow from the bank. And if you'll remember, in the 90s or in the 80s, early 80s, we were paying 23% interest is what we were paying. So it made it very difficult to expand. As we have grown, we have been able to expand by buying property. And I guess the one regret I have is that we didn't buy more.
Yeah.
But we couldn't borrow any more money. We were at our limit, our max all the time.
So tell us about that with Farm Credit. Like what's the advantage of using Farm Credit?
Well, Farm Credit, typically you get a better farm, or you better get a better interest rate on it. So that's why you would go with Farm Credit. We've never dealt with Farm Credit. We've just dealt with banks. After our first exposure to them, we have never dealt with them after that.
Okay. And like, you know, I mean, Jill would always criticize you about, you know, Paul Parkinson's real life Monopoly game. Okay. You enjoy real estate, okay, and you do. I mean, we don't sugarcoat. I'm not going to get into all the farms, but you own some farms. But one of the best properties that you ever bought was what?
Well, we talked about that.
We just put parameters on what it looks like.
If it's level, big fields, and square corners, that's a good farm.
Okay.
But we have a lot that aren't like that.
Now, do you like, and going forward, like in terms of stability of like rentals, have you ever done any rental properties? Like you're not just buying agricultural land, right?
No, we have, but we've bought. We've been involved in a condominium project. We're involved with that,
Yeah.
but we do have rentals because the farms you buy typically come with houses on them. So we are in the rental business.
Okay. And what about your little rental up here in Rockwood? How's that performed?
So far, it's there's some challenges with it,
Yeah.
as anybody in real estate knows.
Yeah, because you had your siblings living in that house. They don't pay rent. They don't pay rent. Okay. So, so then, and with the family aspect of it, okay, like 4 kids, they're all within the age of what? Like they're all within like 7 years of each other, right?
Todd to Jill is 7 years.
7 years,
yeah.
correct.
Right. And then, I mean, it is like one of the things that I experienced when I was working there was there wasn't set hours. Like we would work 12 hours a day, 14 hours a day. So like there's a reason there's lights on a tractor. And I didn't really like think that before, but like it would be 8 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock at night and you'd be getting there at 7. Like it was like a sweatshop. And I just wanted to confront you. No, I'm just kidding. But like the confines of the farming industry are totally different. Whereas like the mentality is that, you know, we do as much as we can when we have the light or we have the weather, and we just keep going until it's done. All right. So with the kids, I mean, there's times you're 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night, you're coming home and they're already in bed, right?
Many times.
Lynn's pissed off. She's on the porch having a beer, okay? And you're like, you got one of them for me, Lenny? But like, tell us about that. Like, do you have any, I mean, do you have any regrets? Do you have like, you know, do you wish that you would have kind of stopped it a little earlier, had more time with the kids, or bath time and back rubs?
Always you wish you had more time with your children, yes. Like many times I would leave before anybody was out of bed, and many times come home when everybody was in bed and never see anybody. So that was just common practice. And when the weather's good, that's when you roll. That's when you work. So hours were, like you say, 12, 14. Like lots of times there'd be some days I wouldn't have any sleep for 2 or 3 nights, because that dictated that the weather maybe was going to change, so you had to keep on going and get the crop in the ground. But when I did get out of that other business that I was in '99, that freed me up to be more around our kids at that point in time. So when I did come home, then I was able to do the extracurriculars. I coached all 4 of them in fastball here in Rockwood. Still coaching a fastball men's team in Rockwood now. We did a lot of things together as a group. We purchased a cottage that we never got to go to in the summertime for years and years and years. Now we try and go there as a family to be together. So, yeah, it was weather dictates farming. If you're in the fields, that's what, you know. When the weather's good, you go.
But you didn't like. It's more of a way of life as opposed to like a job or anything like that. It all merges into one, correct?
Correct.
And then for a lot of people, it's super difficult.
Yeah, well, it's a way of life, and that's where part of the difficulties we're having now is getting help that's willing to sacrifice, you know, their time and work those long hours when it needs to be. Nobody now wants to do that. They want to work 8 hours a day, 9 hours a day, and be done. Well, that's not farming. Farming doesn't operate that way.
So then Sarah, we'll just get you to jump in here, okay? How did you feel about that? You know, like you're healthy, you're happy, you know, you're into farming.
Yeah, like I can remember.
You don't have too much resentment. Right?
I can remember as a young kid, like the send off to Dad in the morning before we got on the school bus. You know, he'd go around and come to the front door and you'd take him out his coffee. So I have lots of memories like that and off for the day. And yeah, I don't have a lot of memory. Like, I know that you're saying like you weren't there a lot, but I don't remember that. Like, to the point when I started baseball, like Dad was always there, you know, he'd take me to my baseball games, coach me. Like, I just have fond memories of that. And then I also have memories of being able to help and be there to help the family. Like you said, it's a lifestyle, you know, you're all working together. And I think now when I look at, you know, my siblings, and then Dad has 9 grandchildren, just trying to remember what those values are and then instilling those on that next generation too. Like, we do maple syrup. So we always have seasons. We talk about seasons: planting season, harvest season, maple syrup, and then we do sweet corn in the summer. So, you know, when those seasons are there, it's like all hands on deck. My mom always says it takes a community to raise a family, and that's what we have. So it's just, I feel too like Dad had mom at home. I have a husband at home who's committed to my career choice and my family too. So if you don't have that strong support system, I can see that it would be very challenging.
So then, I mean, because when I think about the farm, right, I think about you might be out in the field, right? But you've got the radios, and like, remember Sarah and I, we used to play around on the radio,
come in, Paul. And then I would be like, Paul, go ahead. And like, try to always sound like you. And it would work a lot of the time. Like, okay, we're all done for the day. But at the same breath, you're there, but you're not there. Like, you're in and out of that farm, right? So you may come home for lunch, or you might not come home for lunch, or you might have to get a piece of equipment, and then you're in the shop for an hour or two. Like, you know, or a rim breaks off a versatile, and you have to go and send Sarah to Stewart's and bring it back. And I mean, so like, you know, as much as you might think you're not being there, you're there, and everybody lends the hand, which is what the community is about. But even with these guys, like potatoes, corn, eggs, with the egg stand. So like, you know, when your dad let you have the pigs, and then you were saying, okay, geez, you know what, there's the money to be made here. You've got your own thing going on, even though you were helping him with his stuff. I'd imagine the kids, to me, always had that stand. Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and the interesting thing about that stand, and like, I hope like CRA's not listening, but like, we, you know, you guys, you know, you the kids were able to make money off that and do things with that money.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. And it wasn't like you're like at the time, you know, it was like $2 a dozen of corn. It wasn't a lot of money, but it's over time. So you're showing them, you know, okay, like, maybe you're not going to get, like, it's not going to be right away, but this is what can happen, saving and working for it, right?
Yeah. And that's what we do now with that business, is for the grandkids, right? Like,
so all of our kids, our 4 kids, all live a stone's throw away from home. Within 5-6 miles is the grow flies are home. So we get a lot of support, like for the sweet corn and the eggs and potatoes. We get a lot of support, and maple syrup especially. So we'll have, you know, I have 3 son-in-laws that'll show up on a Saturday or Sunday to help. And, you know.
Who's your favorite? Which one's your favorite?
Well, they're all my favorite. That's a loaded question. But we have, you know, at times, everybody's there. So and Todd's got a girlfriend. So we've got, you know,
He does?
There's lots of people around. And then the bonus is you got 9 grandchildren that'll be there helping. Yeah. And 2 or 3 of them are getting old enough. They drive the tractor and they do help.
And how old are they?
11 and 9. 11 and 9.
Oldest.
And I think I was like 17.
Yeah.
So I mean, okay. So I mean, I guess too, you talk about seasons, right? And then you look forward to those seasons, like, you know, having a rye, watching the maple syrup boil, and things like that. All of a sudden, tend to be traditions, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a family bonding thing. Is really what it is, and it teaches. It taught our kids. Now we're trying to teach the grandchildren.
Yeah. That,
you know, if you work and you help, you'll be able to get ahead.
But it's a mindset too, right? Like, you're not getting up at, you know, 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. thinking, shit, now I got to get up again and again. I mean, you're happy to get up. You're having a productive day. Everybody's moving, right? There's no resentment or I wish I was here or you know what I mean?
No resentment at all. No.
No changes.
No. Look forward to every day and the challenges that they bring.
So then with the challenges of farming, and Sarah can touch on this too, is there was always, and I've kind of realized that in my business as well, is there's always something that's going to happen. Like I mentioned the tire coming off the Versatile, and like when that happened, like that happened with me, but it like ripped the rim, and I'm thinking like maybe I did something wrong, you know, or like the oil, the oil coming out of the forks stuck, like the transmission oil stuck on Highway 24. You don't, like, you look at those problems like it's in its entirety, right? Like that's business, or it's the cost of doing business on a yearly thing. So like it wasn't like, what the hell did you do? It was like, okay, call Lynn. Lynn's going to pick you up. You're going to go to Stewart's or wherever we're going to go. You're going to get a rim. Like I had to drive to Brampton one time to get a rim for you. And like, so, but it wasn't like, it was just like, you know, that's another day. And then the next day we get back in the fields.
Yeah.
Okay. And then interestingly enough, and I'm going to touch on this, is there was a couple times when I worked for you that we had a concert that we were going to go to, right? And I said, hey, Paul, like, I'm going to come in, or can I take the day off tomorrow because we're going to go to a concert and the boys are going to drink? And you're like, well, you go to the concert, just come in when you wake up. You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
So then I came in when I woke up, and we were in Puslinch. We were south of Guelph somewhere. And I had the roller. And then you came into the tractor, you opened up the tractor door, and you're like, I think Matt Brown should drive the roller. I think you should drive the rock picker and leave the tractor in the field when you're done. Remember that?
Yes.
Yeah. So it was, so like for me, I'm like, you know, I wanted like it kind of rolled, one day kind of rolled into the next, but we were still able to do things. And the other thing too that I'll touch on is one time we were going to a cousin of mine's wedding in Florida, and it was like full bore planting season, and I said, well, if you don't want me to go, I won't go. But my dad and my brother we were going to drive down. I don't know if you remember that or not, but you said, well, you know, we need your help, so. You know, maybe you could do the fly down and not drive down, and it's only, you know, you limit the week versus a couple days. And then the next morning you'd phone me and you said, you know what, you're not going to get many opportunities like that. So anyways, it's getting weird. Anyways, but like, so for me, we went like, so my brother Jevin, Kyle flew. He was the smart one. And then we drove down to Florida, but we've never done that again. Right? So it was just interesting. So when you talk about like the family stuff, it works all in conjunction with each other.
Absolutely, it does. Right? Yeah.
Okay. So going forward, with Sarah, okay, you had 3 girls and 1 boy. Okay? Out of the 3 girls, the only one that's into farming is Sarah.
The other 2 girls come and help.
Okay.
If we need help, they'll be there. So, and the son-in-laws will be there too. Okay, they have been and they've helped. They've driven tractors and trucks. So yes, everybody is on hand. All hands on deck when we need them.
Okay, so Sarah's turn. She had the same upbringing as you, relatively, in the farming business. Okay, except when she graduated high school, she went to university, right? And she did her master's. Correct? Okay, so. This is for Sarah, but for you, is that what you wanted for her, or did you care?
I wanted each child to do what they wanted to do and have the opportunity to do that. That's what I wanted.
So it didn't matter.
It didn't matter. I just wanted, if they chose to do something, I wanted to make sure they had the opportunity to go and do that.
Okay.
Without any roadblocks.
So she did that, but then she ended up back where you are here. Right? Yeah. Like full circle. I shouldn't say back, but full circle.
But she can touch on it. She went to work for Pioneer and then decided that was getting to be a long drive and that Well, you can touch on it, how that happened.
Yeah, so go ahead, Sarah. So you
Yeah.
went to where?
So I graduated from the University of Guelph.
As an Aggie.
And I wasn't an Aggie. I was a plant science.
Okay, what's the difference?
Because
we see if you guys are from Guelph, you see the Aggie jackets.
I never had an Aggie jacket, so I was
Okay.
never part of that elite group.
If anybody's out there with an Aggie jacket, Sarah wants one.
And then after that, I worked for a year. At the time, it was Monsanto in a breeding program, in a soybean breeding program. And I met in that year, and actually I got that job because Dad, the breeder that worked there, had worked with Dad in the past. And so that had helped me get that job. Worked there for a year. I met my professor that I went on to do my master's with in soybean breeding and genetics. And the day I graduated, I got offered a job with Pioneer, or now it's Corteva, in the soybean breeding program.
So when you say soybean breeding, what do you mean?
Okay, so that's like plant breeding basically is looking at the next up and coming varieties. So what challenges exist in that industry in the different maturity groups of soybeans, for example. So what kind of pests are there? What kind of herbicides do they need to be resistant to be able to and ultimately it leads to yield.
Yeah.
So it's using the genetics and the known genome of that plant to be able to take it to the next level.
So you guys, but all the seeds that you guys use currently are all modified.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then they're modified to get the yield.
Yeah, so when you say GMO, there's a lot of different things that can go into that. It could be a gene that's controlling resistance to a chemical. It could be natural resistance that already exists within that genome of plants, stacking different genes to make it even more resistant to something. So we deal with, one of the things we're really into is soybean cyst nematode, which is a pathogen that's underground.
Yeah.
You hardly know you have it, but it robs yield every year. So we're pretty adamant about only selecting varieties that have some type of resistance to that, and then going forward with other different things that we do.
So the yield, so like I mean, what would the yield be now versus what it was in the 70s or the 80s?
Yeah, so you probably remember.
Well, we were one of the first, if not the first, to grow beans around this area. It
was a forage crop before, it wasn't an oil crop.
Yeah, so we grew.
What do you mean by that?
The animals would eat it, so not necessarily for like oil seeds.
Okay.
And that wasn't till like the 80s or
in the 70s we were growing them.
where they started producing it as like an actual field, like a grain crop.
Okay.
So now, back then we were getting 20 to maybe 25 bushels to the acre. Now we're 50, 60, 70 bushels an acre in the area.
Holy shit! But then on the same breath, the seeds cost more money.
That's correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's an advantage, but then
Seed, equipment, herbicides, any type of input into that crop costs more.
okay. And then if you wanted to farm today, could you have a seed that wasn't modified?
Would.
Well, no,
Anybody that sells.
pretty well every.
Would they want to?
Pretty well every variety, whether it be a soybean, corn, or barley or wheat, they're all modified some way genetically, because they're trying to build yield into that plant, into the variety.
So whether that's like shuffling genes
Yeah.
that already exist, that's still a new crop, right? Like it doesn't necessarily mean it has to have a transgene in there.
Okay.
So at the University of Guelph, a lot of the varieties, barley varieties that they've come out of the University of Guelph. The profs in there are genetically, moving these genomes around within different plants to come up with a new variety.
So it's like ultimately it's a benefit for everybody.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
Well, when you talk about like land and then what that looks like, so back then there was more farmland and you're producing 25 bushels to an acre. That's continually shrinking with like urbanization.
Yeah.
People coming, like we're getting bigger as the urban centers are getting bigger, farmland is getting smaller. So with the farmland, you need to be more productive, or as productive as that you can be. So that's where all of those different genetic gains for yield come in.
Okay. And you guys feel that squeeze.
Yeah.
And then I guess what it does too is it increases the price of farmland as well.
Correct.
And instability too. So one year you might have a farm. Like we've had a couple instances where people buy them with the opportunity of development.
Yeah. That
maybe would take 20, 30, down the line. And then when that changes hands, every time that changes hands, there's a risk that you can't rent that anymore. They have someone else maybe lined up, or there's just insecurity in that.
So, okay, so I'm going to get back to that in a second, but when you finished, when you went to Monsanto, because we kind of got off.
Yeah.
What made you want to get back to come to farming?
Yeah, family.
Is that it? Like women in farming, is that like, like you made it, like when I talked about women in farming, you were like, yeah, Ty, we even wear pants too, So like, how did you, I guess you see it more like, and it's kind of what I was touching on with Lynn, is like, it's always been there.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, whether it's through farming directly or with the family portion of it. But tell us about that. Like, did you say, hey, Dad, I want to come back and run the business? I know you want to give it to Todd, but Todd doesn't have what it takes to do it. Like,
How
Sorry,
it
Todd.
shook out was I guess I was just starting my family at the time, and I was driving to Woodstock, so over 2 hours a day to get to my job. And I loved my job. Still to this day.
Would you would you do it again? Would you, like, if things changed?
I think what that job did for me, which is probably what Dad wanted, it opened doors for me, right? I met so many people that I still talk to or have connections with in the industry, or have that allegiance to that, like, I still feel part of that in a way.
Yeah.
So it opened doors for me, which what I think he wanted. But then at the time, all my siblings had careers or gone down different paths. And it was kind of up to me to make that choice. And I was already doing those things that I do now. I was working in a research, so we still had to combine everything. And I was working long hours, and planting and harvest looked the same, but it wasn't at home.
Yeah.
And so for me, that transition of that lifestyle, I was already doing that, just further away. Like I was going to Chatham or Sarnia. So the commute was becoming very long. And so that was an easy choice for me.
But was it a discussion, or was it like, hey, Dad, I'm back?
No, I think we...
Get the hell out of the way.
I don't...
Was it?
Paul,
you'll never retire.
We discussed it.
He will never retire.
I know. I hope he doesn't.
He's like my dad. Like when we talk about a way of life, what else would he do?
Yeah.
Okay, so go on. So what was it like?
Do you remember having
Well,
a
we
direct
had
conversation?
we had a discussion, and at that point in time, we decided we were getting a lot of fertilizer spread by a couple other companies, and we decided we should be doing that job ourselves. So we bought a fertilizer spreader the year she came back, and that was going to be her job, and that's what she did, as well as learning all the other stuff and learning how to run a combine and a sprayer, a corn planter, soybean planter. She's done all of that.
But that's not all. Like, you've got to look at the books. You've got to check the yields. Like, you know what I mean? There's a lot of other stuff. Like, I could do that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know about
Right?
that. Yeah.
So, but that was the reason for coming back originally. Now, of course, as you say, she is doing all the book work, which is a relief for me, and doing a lot of the computer stuff and a lot of the modern day farming stuff that we have to do to keep ahead.
Okay. So how many acres, like, so now you guys essentially, like, is Sarah running things now and you're an employee?
Oh, it's a joint.
It's joint?
Yes.
Okay. And then if any, like, I know Todd, he comes out and helps out. And,
correct.
Okay. And then, but like right now it's you two. If anybody else wanted to come on board, then they would come on board.
Yeah. Yeah. There would be room. Correct.
How many acres are you farming currently?
3,500 in total, plus a lot of custom work that we do. Maybe
I don't
1,000,
know.
1,500 acres of custom work,
Okay.
and
So around 5,000.
something in that area. We do a lot of spraying for other people too. So yeah.
So what's the, like for Sarah, okay, what's the vision for you, right? Like do you, like 5,000 acres, do you have ambition to do 10,000?
I don't know if that's the goal, like more acres, or is it being more productive on what you have? So using tools, like Dad said, modern technology exists to make data-driven decisions. And so I think I spend enough time doing those kinds of
Looking
things.
at the numbers?
That's right. So from, we have historical data from every piece of equipment, every wheel that's touched the ground since 2016, I was looking at the other day. Whether that's totally accurate data or not, but anything that has been in that field, I have that data.
Okay.
What it spread, what the yields were, and then choosing, like quality controlling it obviously, but then choosing what data I choose for this year's fertilizer spreading. So when I go back, so for example, what I'm doing or have been doing recently was going back to yield maps and making decisions to get a 10% reduction in cost for fertilizer. Also thinking about the environment in a way that, okay, if I spread it here, chances are it's not going to use it all. At what point does that become a toxicity where I'm just blanket fertilizing? Or what point does that become a runoff problem? Or what point, it's not, the plants aren't using it because the potential is not there. So using prescription-based data to make some of those decisions. And there's lots of examples like that, I guess.
So you think like you were getting, 20 or 30 bushels per acre, now you're getting 40 or 50. Do you think it's possible to get 60 or 70 down the road?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. As new varieties come out and we get better
Technology.
better technology,
basically.
yes. Yeah.
So Paul, how do you see Sarah? Just her talking like this, okay? I've never heard you talk like that before about numbers. Is this the next generation?
Yep.
Right? Like that you've taken so far and then she's gonna.
Yeah. That's what's happening.
Like, do you feel like she's got a lot more insight right now with her finger on the pulse than you do?
Well, as far as the technology part goes, she yes.
What about the yields and the numbers?
Well, we still work together on that, on how we're going to approach each farm, because each farm is different. Each spring is different. Each day is different. Okay,
He knows every acre, right? So that's something that you can't just learn quickly. So, here's the wet spot. You probably maybe had maps, handwritten maps. Dad, here's a tree, and just a couple 100 feet away is the wet spot. Stay out of that. That's something that you have to learn. That's not, and that's.
But you can tile drain those spots if you want to. But I mean, I guess just going back to the yields portion, like, were you always doing that?
Oh, yield driven, absolutely.
Were you always doing that to this capacity?
No.
Like say like 10%, like you wouldn't have
No, well, we have the technology has changed, right? And it is ever changing. And that's the technology now, is that what she's talking about, prescriptions, that we can take a farm and decide we're going to spread X number of pounds on the hill and X number of pounds down on the low where we know we're going to get the yield. So, I mean, there's
so it's not just like farm related, it's like elevation related.
Oh, and dryness.
Wow. It's amazing because when outside in, right, when you see the tractors, and we're going to talk about this, but outside in, you think, okay, well, it's farming, you just plant it, you roll it, you fertilize it, and that's it. Like, it's amazing how, and hopefully people get this, is how precise you have to be. And 10% on a yield is the difference between making money or not making money. And,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think, there's so many factors now too. Weather stations, soil sampling, like it's all data driven. And then applying that to your own farms, and you have to make it pay, right? Like
So
the technology that exists is just incredible. So there's new sprayers out there. They're called See and Spray sprayers. So it's not blanket spraying anymore. It has technology where it's telling, I see a weed. It's outside of the row. I'm turning on and off. And it's like instantaneously just picking where it's going to spray. Or like eventually they talk a lot about this, and this does exist, is autonomy. So instead of you being out there driving the combine all night, the efficiency is I can control it from my iPhone. I can put a boundary on that farm. I sit there at my desk. I send out, I want it to be tilling at 2 inches. It sets up itself. See you later.
Wow.
So that exists, and that's how fast, just like technology in other areas. Do you see that
happening here?
So Puss Lynch, absolutely not a chance, because there's rocks,
rocky.
Hills, that kind of thing. I think in our area, no. But like think of farmers out west. That is the perfect example. Instead of getting your 14-hour day in, you're 24 hours.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's like mind-boggling,
Yeah, so if you just look up autonomy, like that is happening now.
Okay, and then just for anybody out there, if you guys are driving tractors, okay, the old school farmers will write maps on like napkins and where stones are, and they never tell you the address of the farm. They'll tell you the old original owner's name twice removed. So like the Milson farm, the Fleer farm. And I'm like, well, who lives there now? And he's like, well, I own it. Like, so it's not the Parkinson farm. And I kind of like that too, because it does, it brings it back a little bit, right? And it gives some gratitude to, previous stewards of the land per se. So, okay, so when you guys are farming a parcel of land, okay, and I didn't know this before I worked for Paul, but you can, I guess first off, what's the crop that gives you guys the most yield, and what's the crop that gives you guys the most return on your money?
So we talked about a little bit that this morning. So it's all market driven, right?
Okay.
So, and every single farm is different. Depends if you're paying rent on that. Is there a mortgage? All of those factors play into it. But we grow a lot of seed. So that means
Like
soybean or wheat seed. So that means seed that a farmer is going to pick up. We grow it this year. Next year, that will be in a farmer's field on a larger scale. So with that comes some other challenges, like it has to be inspected and meet the CFIA standards. It has to be harvested at a certain moisture. We store it on farm, challenges like that. And I think since we do all of that, you get paid a premium. So that's probably our best profitable crop.
So like a soybean, but would they get the most yield too?
So it's supposed to be new varieties, right? So you're hopeful that the stack of genes that's in there and then the yield potential is the top of the line. That doesn't always happen, though.
So it goes by quality of the seed too?
Yeah, so you have to, like, our harvested quality, you mean, Ty? Yeah, so that has to go into the bag next year, right? So if your quality's poor, the germ for the next farmer that uses it may be poor, and you're going to get a bad crop.
Okay.
So yeah, there's a lot of factors. They grade it a lot. And Dad's been doing it for 45 years this year. He's been a seed grower for 45 years. So that's a huge achievement.
Seeds.
I'm what they call a select grower. So I can get stuff right from a university professor or university and
breeder.
Grow a breeder, and I can grow it. So I'm one step away from what I get is breeder seed. So
and then you, in return, you help with the data for them.
Yes,
in a way, I guess.
In a way, but it's you have to be a seed grower to grow pedigreed seed, and that pedigreed seed. So then it goes down the line, whether it be select, breeder, select, foundation, registered, certified, and certified is what the normal farmer would be buying to plant on his land. So we grow, we sometimes get a bag of breeder seed that might only be 10 kilograms, and we are to multiply that over
to scale it up.
What's the benefit for you then if you're kind of like experimenting with seed?
Well, we're getting a premium to do that.
So you get paid to do that?
Correct.
Oh, interesting. So there's another income stream there.
Yeah. But as far as a crop, which crop returns the best, it all depends on what's happening in the world, on pricing. We're priced out. Our basic price is set in the Chicago Board of Trade, so that's where our price begins. So it depends on what's happening in the world.
It's very political.
For example, it's political. For example, Western canola has been hit by 100% tariff from China, and that is only due because Canada decided, in their wisdom, to put 110% tariff on electric cars coming out of China last August or September. Yeah. Now they come back and hit us. So the poor canola growers out west are scrambling, deciding whether we should even be growing canola.
Oh, then the other alternative is to find other markets, but you can't do that.
Well, you're not going to do. I think 70 or 65 or 70% the canola goes to China. Well,
so you're not going to find a bigger market in China.
So there's a lot of things when you ask which crop is the most profitable. There's a lot of variables in there.
Brazil, like what's going on?
Probably soybeans have been our best crop.
So how do they? This media guy. How do they? How do you sell them? So you harvest. You harvest in the fall, right? You don't sell them right away.
You could sell them
right off the combine if you wanted to.
We typically store and sell hopefully in the summer months.
So what's the benefit?
Well, usually you get a better price, but that's not been the way the world is changing. That is not necessarily correct anymore. So we have to revisit what our marketing plans are, and some of the fellows that have been selling right off the combine have been doing equally as well or better than we have in the last number of years.
So when you store, you pay a fee to store it, or a rent fee to store your grain.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the hope is, so you're paying on a monthly basis or weekly basis, whatever it is, and then you sell when the prices from the, what did you say? The
Chicago Board.
Okay. And then if their prices are up, then you sell it, like futures, right?
Right. But it could be down. There's no guarantee. There's no guarantee of what's going to happen.
How long can you store those?
Well, typically we would store till usually August or September. Then we can put it on what's called a basis contract. It's too confusing to get into.
Yeah.
But you could own the Chicago part of the pricing. The basis is set, but you could own the Chicago price for years and years and years by just rolling contracts ahead.
Okay. So
sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
So then how long can you store? Like how long can you store 2025 soybean? How long can you store them for?
They'll want to any elevator will want that crop out of their system so they can get ready to accept a new crop by September.
Okay. So that's typically the time frame. Correct. You have 8 months, 12 months.
Yeah.
To store, but then you can still have open contracts that you're playing the market.
Really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Then where do the seeds go in the interim then? They just...
Well, once they're on a basis contract, they can be sold and used. Mm-hmm. So you're really just playing... It's no different than the stock market. It's just a stock market.
It seems freaking exhausting. Okay, I'm like I just drove a rock picker, okay? And if I needed to take a dump, he would throw me a roll of toilet paper and put it behind the seat. And just make sure nobody can see you from the road. But you go from... Well, you go from, cultivating the field, okay? You go from picking the rocks, planting the seeds, rolling the field, and then you're looking at your fertilizer and all your data. And then once you have your yield, then you have to decide when you want to sell it. And if you time it wrong, you might make no money.
Correct.
That's correct.
Or lose money.
Yeah.
Wow. There's no guarantee you're going to make money. Okay, from the day you decide that you're going to rent a piece of ground, you're gambling. So farming is gambling.
Yeah.
From the day you decide you're going to go out and rent that acre, you are gambling.
There's so many.
But I mean, to some degree, right? Like most farmers will say, most farmers complain about the weather and they complain about making no money. Right, but there's money to be made. You just have to know what you're doing. Correct.
Right, but there's so many other things happening within the world, and that's
out of your control.
Out of
Especially
our
control.
Now. Right. So our commodities that we grow are for the world. So it's on a world market that we're selling them. So for
that's
example,
interesting.
when the U.S. decides we're going to put 125% tariffs on China's, how many beans out of U.S. go to China? Huge number of beans, millions, billions of bushels go to China out of the States. When they decided to do that, the next day the beans were down 30 cents a bushel. So that's just something out of our control.
So then I guess, like, is that not a normal cost to do business for you? Like, have you not seen those fluctuations in tariffs throughout the years? Like I know everybody's talking about tariffs now, but we've always had them, right? Like the farming sector for me is almost like it's either for a lot of people, okay, and I'm not trying to. It's a lot, like, people forget about it. Like, they're just like, okay, hey, the bread comes here, and they don't think about the only thing that they're worried about is, be patient. We have families too
On
when
May
they're stuck
2-4.
behind a
Yeah.
freaking tractor. So, like, it's just interesting that there's obviously so much more to it, but you guys are almost like forgotten to a sense. If that does that make sense, or is that
How much have you heard in the federal election about
Nothing.
farming?
Nothing.
Arrest my case.
The only thing I've heard
you-
thing I've heard about is dairy.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yep.
Did you see we were talking about Pierre Poilievre's, and I'm not being
No,
like
it's okay.
one side or
It
the
doesn't
other,
matter.
but
It doesn't matter.
his commercial about you can come from anywhere, and then it flashes to a tractor with like no cab. It's just
Yeah.
like a farmer on a cabless tractor, which is,
Yeah.
and then
Not
it's like
today's farmer.
you can be
No.
anything. It's like saying, okay,
Yeah.
what is that painting the picture of a farmer? Because what we just discussed about technology
It's
is
insane.
we're rising to the same level
Well,
of anyone.
I would argue different. Like, I would argue that in terms of technology, you guys are ahead of any industry. Like, we have AI in our industry that can write listing descriptions.
Sure.
But I mean, like I said, like, even GPS on tractors, it's been there for years where you can, like, it moves over an inch,
Yeah.
right? So I would argue, and from this, and hopefully people get this from watching it, is like you guys are ahead of that trend. Like, when you're talking, like, I want a remote control car to take me to the airport so I can do work on my phone, right? But you're talking about a tractor, and you're talking about planting, like, and you're telling me that it's already happening. That's insane.
Yeah, like I can now in our farm, like doing those prescriptions, but say the fertilizer spreader's out there or the planter, and I'm like, oh wait, I don't like what I made. I'm just gonna send you a new file. I'm gonna send you a new prescription. I can just do that so quickly.
Yeah.
Like you were talking about finding farms and stuff. Well,
Yeah.
that's not even a question anymore. I just hit one button on my app that I have, and it pans out the directions for you. Or I know there's a wet spot there. Well, I've already marked it. Like, you should see it on your screen. No one's going to get stuck. Like, there's so
and you
many.
know where they are, right?
Yeah,
Like that,
I know where they are. There's a boundary on it.
So when the combining or we're working, if we come to a wet spot or in Pushlands, for example, there's stones, big stones right at the top of the surface. As you're out there cultivating or planting, you just need to hit a button, and it automatically puts a flag on that spot, and it'll tell everybody else in our group that there's a stone there for years to come.
Take some of the
in
risk
your
away,
group,
right?
like in
In our farming, everybody that has computers in their tractors, it automatically updates that.
So then somebody will benefit
Exactly.
from something that you've done.
Right.
Yeah, you don't run into it, right?
Okay. So I'm going to jump to that in terms of like tariffs and stuff like that. Okay. What are, like, canola, are there any recently that you feel is going to have an impact on your not your yield, but your sales?
It's
Probably
changing every
probably
day.
soybeans and corn because the U.S. is a huge exporter of farm products. So all those countries they're potentially going to have tariffs on, which is changing daily, and we
Yeah.
really don't know.
No.
So that is why the stock market is taking such a hit, because we don't know. Well, our commodity is a stock, and fortunately, we haven't been hit quite as hard as the stock market, but yeah, it's showing up.
So when the U.S. puts tariffs on anything from Canada coming in, that's when you'll see the effect that way.
Right.
But
Well,
even on a broader scale, because the market changes based on what's predicted, right? Like, so for example, the USDA puts out a report. We think that the average yield in the United States is going to be X for corn. That next day, it's either going up or down to when it's actually truth, right? So like, it's just, it's everything. It's not just across from US to Canada. You know, Brazil, they have their 2-cycle soybeans. If they get a drought, bean markets are going like, so it's just global.
Now, couldn't you, so like, I guess like, you know, because like, then I guess at that with that premise, you would sell, right? Like it's kind of like real estate. I would like people like, when do I sell? Well, you sell now because now you know what the market's like. Down the road, you don't know if it could go up or down. So it's very similar to that. So right now, you guys would be more apt to sell versus it's more of it's bigger gamble holding it. Would you say?
There's a gamble on anything, right? I guess you have to try and be disciplined and get to a price point that you think works for you, and at that point in time, pull the plug and sell it. And if it goes higher, so be it. You don't sell everything, so maybe you've got some more to sell if it goes higher. If it goes lower, you pat yourself on the back and say that was a good move, but why didn't you do it
trading,
all?
right?
It's a stock. It's just a market.
There's full-time people that do that. Like we could, the industry exists where this is a job.
So, Paul, what's like throughout the years? What is what's something that you can distinctly remember that's impacted prices of your product? Like,
so it was back in the 90s, and you can buy product. Okay, you can buy wheat. Okay, this happened to be wheat, so you can buy wheat with the futures paper. It's just paper. So you buy 5,000 bushel contracts. If you choose to deliver that or to receive that product, it's Toledo, Ohio, is where it's going to be delivered to. So there's a terminal there. That's what happens. A huge company in the States bought wheat at a certain price. They wanted the physical property. They wanted the wheat because they could foresee a drought coming in the Midwest, which there was that year, and a drought in Canada. So they could foresee that. So they wanted to have product in place to run their flour mills across the states. Huge company. Talking thousands, hundreds of thousands of contracts they wrote. When it came time, and this is why I don't like the Chicago Board of Trade, it's not called that anymore, but that's what it was called at that point in time. They wanted the product, so they owned the product. They had bought it. Well, when you buy a piece of paper, you have to sell it. It's like a stock market, right? You have to buy and sell. There actually was no product. It was just all paper. So what it did was drive the price up, wheat, from about $3.50 to $7 in a matter of about 4 or 5 days. So if you were on the wrong side of that market, you really got hurt. And then the Chicago Board of Trade forced them to sell, but that didn't guarantee what they wanted. They wanted the actual physical product to run their mills. So that was one thing that.
So couldn't somebody just essentially do that every year?
They could, but there's balances, checks and balances that are in place now. But the credibility of the Chicago Board of Trade went right down the tubes at that point in time because they wanted the actual physical property.
And they sold more than what they had.
Well, it's just paper. They trade paper.
But can they do that? Like
they do it all the time.
Wow. I'm going to get into this market. We're going to talk more. Okay, so let's jump to the work, the quality of the work. So when you have like let's say you have soybeans, you can't keep growing soybeans on the same plot of land every year in and year out, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so tell us about rotating crops and what that means for people out there that don't understand. Because to me, I would say, well, if wheat is your top crop and you're getting $7, what was it,
a bushel,
an acre. If you're getting $7 a bushel, why wouldn't you just always grow wheat?
So we rotate between soy, wheat, and corn. So we plant wheat after the soy crop comes, a winter wheat after the soy comes off in the fall.
Yeah. Why?
Okay, so I guess you're trying to avoid any types of pathogens, and also in the soil, different pathogens can drop in the soil, then they can overwinter and then cause huge infection. For example, in soybeans is white mold. So there's a little tiny sclerotia, which I think can stay for years and years, but that's just an example that if you rotate your crop, the less infection you're going to have next year if you grew soybean on soybean.
And that's why they do it.
Correct. And then other crops require different levels of nutrients from the soil. So for example, corn is highly nitrogen driven, so it needs that. Soybeans, on the other hand, have nodules on the roots and they fix nitrogen into the soil. So it's a balance, right? So you're constantly...
So it's a benefit to have one before the other.
Correct.
Or one after the other.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're always constantly rotating.
Yes.
Okay. Then when you guys farm the land, okay, now there's if I guess it depends on the contracts you have to rent the fields, right? But if you farm that land, there will be certain farmers that don't care. If they only have a 2-year contract or 3-year contract, maybe they just do soybeans for the 3 years because they just don't know that they're gonna get that field in the previous year, so why put the money into it? So tell us about the work that goes into the fields for you guys.
So if we rent the land,
And
rent them?
And what's your what's your take on it? Like do you have a what's the culture around that? Do you have hey, if we take care of the field, they're going to take care of us? Like,
it depends on who the owner is, I suppose. Some people are super hands off. Other people, we kind of, even if we're renting to them, maybe they have a suggestion or something that they want to see happen. And we're pretty good about following through with those kinds of things. So it kind of just depends. I think in general, we have our own farmland, which there's a question you asked about like 50 years down the line. I think with some of the things that we're doing with some of our own land, that will still be like super productive land in 50 years because we're investing in that now. So that's super important to it. Soil health, huge for us, what we want to see to happen there, because in the end, eventually that's going towards your yields, right? And preserving the land. So sometimes people have different. Yeah, I think if we rent it, then we make those choices.
Well, for instance, if there's some farming companies that don't pick rocks, right? If you don't pick rock, what happens?
A lot of damage to equipment.
Okay.
We refuse now to go to anybody's place and would do any combining. If the rocks haven't been picked, we won't go.
Okay.
We just refuse.
But then there is some degree too. You've got time, you've got energy, you've got fuel, you've got maintenance on the equipment to go and pick those rocks. So if somebody is out here right now watching and saying, you know what, I'm going to rent my fields out. Okay. How do I pick a farmer? I don't need any names or anything like that. Okay. But when we talked about stewards of the land, that's a true thing. Correct?
Correct.
Where we don't have, you guys are picking the rocks, you're fertilizing the soil. If you're on a year contract, do you put the same amount into that? What does that look like? Or would you expect, you were raised where you would have handshake deals?
Still do.
Now I'd imagine you'd still have contracts too, correct?
But a lot of handshake deals.
Still.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
5 years, 10 years, what would that look like for you? If I had a field right now, Paul, and you came to me, right? You don't need to tell me price per acre because I know you're going to lowball me. But what would that look like? 5 years, 10 years, well, Tyler?
The idea it's changing. Okay, so when we 20 years ago, and as little probably as 10 years ago, we always tried to farm rented land as if we owned it. Yes. So we're fertilizing, we're trying to do the extras, the micronutrients, all those little things that hopefully will give us more yield.
That's what I remember.
Okay, so that's what we're trying to do. The landscape has changed here dramatically with new ownership. taking part, and you don't know, they won't give you 2 or 3, 4 or 5 year lease.
You don't even know them, really.
You don't know them. You can't get a hold of them.
Yeah.
And now
It's
they
a
only
different
want
landscape.
they only want to go 1 year at a time. Well, how much fertilizer do you pour in if you don't know how much you're going to have, how long you're going to have it? So it's changing. So we do have core farms we've had for 40 some odd years from the same land, rented from the same people. Those farms are producing just like the farms we own because we've put fertilizer in and continue to monitor and use that farm as if we owned it, like it was one of our own. Today's day is it's changed dramatically.
So wouldn't it be a benefit to an owner to sign a long-term contract? Or like some owners are just like the highest bidder gets me and that's
correct.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's not about the land.
Like.
It's not. They could care less about the land.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's just who's ever going to pay the most.
Is it because they don't know about it or they just don't give a shit?
They just don't care.
Well, what do you think's in the soil? What do you think if we were farming, what would we be trying to increase? Because nitrogen's a runoff product. So if you lay down nitrogen, that's what people talk about, blooms and all that kind of like environmental impact.
Yeah.
But a soil that we see, that we know we're going to have a long time, it's phosphorus and potassium. Those are like potassium. Soybeans need that like you wouldn't believe. So if we got a farm that came out of someone else's hands or a new farm, let's just say, we go in, we soil test it, I grid it, try and take the best representation, and then target the zones with the fertilizer spreader where I know there's low zones of phosphorus, potassium,
Do you test
whatever.
that much? Like, how would you know? On
Yes.
a 100-acre parcel.
I divide it up
You
into
have 80 acres.
Yeah, I do. So I want to know what it looks like.
So 100 acres might have five zones in it.
And I might spread
You
it
go
differently.
down that technical?
Yeah.
And then
I map it on Google Earth, so every 3 years I'm going back to that exact same spot.
Wow. So is that how you would determine what you would charge per acre?
No, not necessarily. That's more of like on us. What kind of productivity can we get off this farm? So farms, like Dad said, the handshake, the 10, the 20 years, farms we own, we want those levels up there.
Yeah.
Someone that's coming in, we've never met you, kind of resistant. We're about building soil health. We want to leave it better than we found it.
But there's got to be, like, if I owned land
Mm-hmm.
and you said that to me, I would think, okay, these are the right guys for the job. Right? So there's got to be people out there. There's got to be some people that would like, okay, we like Sarah's outlook on this, and this is who we want to take care of our property. But like so if I'm gonna, like, with us in sales, right? There's people that come to us and they say, well, geez, how much money can I get from the land? Like it's this big, huge cash crop. Pardon the pun, okay? But like that's the way they feel. But they're only like realistically, how much is somebody paying per acre, low end, high end? What is it?
That's correct.
What's a low end that someone's paying? 100?
Oh,
yeah,
no.
it'd be more than that now, right?
Yeah, probably 125.
Okay, and then what's the high end?
In our area, 250.
Okay, so you're and that's per acre, right? So it's not like the homeowner. The homeowner is lucky to cover the taxes.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. So if anybody's out there and they think, like, unless they're getting you guys to do custom, right? The reality is they could have a steward of their land that covers the taxes because they do get a bit of a tax break, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they could have somebody to really take care of their land for the difference between the $100 or the $50 per acre, whatever they're willing to pay. That's a fair assessment.
I guess to a certain extent. See, it like people get this. They get this mindset that it's worth. Pick a number, whatever that number may
400,
be.
500.
Yeah, well, say they think it's worth $200 an acre, but it's got 10 fields and 100 acres, and half of them are hills and gravel knolls, or you've got 100 acres of this beautiful flat land, loam soil.
Yeah.
I mean, the potential on the 100 acres that's flat and loam soil compared to the potential on the gravelly 10-acre pieces. I mean, you're
It's
looking at
not
two
even
different
comparing.
But they only hear about that 100 acres, so they think that their land is worth that. So and the other problem is that they hear of big rents down in Midwestern or Southwestern Ontario, but in Southwestern area they can outgrow us and they out yield us too. So the yield factor is different.
And they're further south, right?
Yeah.
So their heat units are less.
Which
Right.
translates into
Higher
better
yield.
higher yield.
So then, if somebody's listening to this again, right? The soil, you said sand, they're loam. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by that?
Well, it's just a soil type.
Okay.
So it's the potential to hold water and
nutrients.
and to grow a bigger yielding crop is much better than a gravel soil.
And then heat units.
Yeah.
So like heat units would help as well. So if someone had sandy loam and then they were further south, okay, what would that look like then? They'd have a more yield.
Yeah. Potentially. What we're trying to do on our operation is we're trying to have our soil health at the highest level it can be. Okay, nutrient value, micronutrients, and then we're trying to do the best job of seed placement, fertilizer placement, all those things that add up to if Mother Nature decides to give us a drink of water once a week, that we're going to end up with
The
highest potential yield we can. Everybody forgets, if Mother Nature doesn't give us a drink of water, doesn't matter what we do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, makes sense. All right.
So like Dad's saying, like we just got a new corn planter. It's been 2 or 3 years now. But it's about exact depth. So it's changing on the fly based on soil type to get it at the exact depth and seed spacing. If it's at the exact same seed spacing, which it sensors, there's a sensor in there and a belt, it's telling me exactly as I'm running it that, yeah, there's not many skips, not many doubles. This is going good. I should be in this specific seed range or like coefficient of variation. Like I should just be at this number and I know everything's working perfectly. It's called the hydraulic downforce. So it's like literally changing all the time to accommodate for any type of soil type that I'm running through to get so the goal is perfect spacing, corn plants coming out of the ground at the exact same time. They're all competing for the same. And so, yeah, that's kind of like technology that we're investing in to create a higher potential.
Okay. So then, so that's cattle corn, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Or distillery corn.
But
It goes for many different things.
Okay. But when you do like sweet corn, okay, you plant it in different, like you 4 rows one day or 1 week and then 4 rows another week. So it all matures at different times, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about that in a second, but a question about Roundup. Okay.
Yes.
Do you get people that are, abutting your land that you're spraying on that you guys have a hassle with, or like the reality is that 99% of the farmers use some sort of pesticide or Roundup?
Yeah, we have and it's not only farmers abutting our land. We are using different varieties that take different herbicides. And those herbicides, for example, in soybeans, if you spray the wrong herbicide on soybeans, it'll kill them. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we have to be we have to manage that to know what we're spraying on what crop has been planted. And we plant 2 different varieties of soybeans that we could have a real problem if we
But would you have an abutting landowner
Sure.
get upset with you for that?
Well, it happens. Like it has happened. We've had it happen to us. We had it happen only 2 years ago where it drifted.
Yeah, and they call it volatilization, so it actually can move.
Yeah.
So it can pick up from your crop canopy and move to like the neighbors if the temperature inversions and anyway the environment's correct. But yeah, so we have that down in Milton. There's people who grow like dry beans or vegetable crops. So sometimes we have to draw the line and say, can someone else smaller come in? We don't want to you're always looking out for everybody else
It's
as
a community,
well.
right?
Yeah, you don't want to
So
hurt someone else.
what about like non-farmers? Like, so some people will look at like cattle and see, skinny hind section and think, okay, that cattle's not being fed, where it's just a type of cattle. Yeah. Do you ever get that in terms of the member of the public talking about that? Like, if I have an acre and you guys are spraying by my house, am I going to be worried?
Typically not.
Yeah.
No, we're conscious of wind speeds and direction and those types of things, and try and use nozzles with low drift, and like the technology has changed and those so dramatically on nozzle bodies now.
Like the sprayer has 10 different options that we use for every different kind of, nitrogen to fungicide to herbicide. Like every single product has a different nozzle.
So that's something that I didn't know.
Yeah, and when Sarah talks about the corn planter, that she's got 3 screens in her,
spaceship in there.
three computer screens in there running that thing. In the sprayer I have 4 computer screens.
Yeah.
Okay, so like the technology has advanced so much.
So you can avoid any of those issues.
Well, 20, 30 years ago when we used to spray, yes, you'd have burnt lawns.
Yeah.
I mean, the technology wasn't there. But nowadays, I feel confident spraying right beside the guy's lawn.
Because Dad's boom also has a sensor on it, so it adjusts to the ground level. It is constantly moving to the correct height to prevent drift. Like it's reading, I don't know how many times a second to adjust for the topography.
Wow, that's interesting.
For her, when she plants corn, talking about the depth, that the hydraulic downforce unit is I think is 33 times a second it changes. So that's the new technology.
It's interesting hearing Paul talk about this, because like for as long as I've known him, he's upgraded his Rockwood Rebels hat, but he had a Rockwood's red hat on, and he probably still has it, but he had that for I would say he wore that same hat for 20 years. Yeah. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. He's going to go, it's in the will, it's going to go to me. Yeah. Okay, Sarah, do you have anything to touch on? A couple of things before we close, but do you have anything to touch on? What are we at for time?
Hour and 34 minutes.
Oh.
See that? That's crazy. Women in farming. Is there a community? Is that a thing? Are we seeing that more? It's not just TikTok trends. Like, what's going on?
Yeah, I don't. My viewpoint on that is kind of general. So I think farming trades, I think the gender barrier is kind of gone, right? Like for me, I don't feel like I'm a woman in ag necessarily. I do feel sometimes when I go to meetings,
do people take you seriously?
Yeah, and I've had that before. Actually, at a farm show, I went with my husband, and they were talking directly to him, and he's like, that's the farmer.
Yeah.
She's the one. So that does still exist, but I think there's a respect.
He plays the part
and maybe
well, though. He does look like a farmer.
Maybe maybe I'm naive to it. I don't know, but I think if you can do your job, you love your job, and you're able to achieve what anyone else in the industry is doing, then I don't think you should have a gender role. So
there's no women in farm movement or anything like that. You think everything's been accepted?
I think
that way.
All that exists, right?
Yeah.
I think you just Google one thing and that's directly where you're going to be led for the rest of the time you're on your iPhone. So for sure, I think that exists.
Yeah.
I don't personally feel that way.
So
I feel this is how I was raised. Todd, me, my sister, I don't feel that.
In our immediate area, there's some big operations, but big farms like ours, lots of farmers. There's lots of ladies driving combines, sprayers, running elevators.
Yeah, I don't think
that's
well accepted in our area.
Yeah,
well accepted.
Okay, good. Okay, and then Paul, when years ago I worked for you grew sweet corn, okay, and I used to buy 50 cents a dozen. You used to sell it to me for, and we would sell it for $4 or $4.50. And I thought, holy shit, this is good money. I'm like, does Paul even know? And I would go there, and it was trust. I'd pick it myself, and anyways, I always used to run into, is this peaches and cream corn? And me being the salesman I am, I'd say, yeah, of course it's peaches and cream corn. Look at this kernels, right? There's your peaches and there's your cream. And then I got back to the shop and you'd say, like, Tyler, I haven't seen any variety of peaches and cream corn since the 70s. It doesn't exist. Tell us this argument. Let's put this to bed.
There is peaches and cream were grown by a fellow by the name of Kenny Fair, who I picked corn for when I was in high school, and in probably the mid 70s, that variety went by the wayside because genetics moved on and bigger cob, better tasting, whatever. So now everything is all about genetics. So that peaches and cream has been gone since the mid 70s, but it just looks like peaches and cream.
Can you remember, like, did it taste different?
I don't know whether it tasted any different.
Who coined it? Like, it's a brilliant marketing.
It was just a great sales. It was a great sales pitch. Did it taste any different than yellow corn? No.
So, like, it was just like you said, it's just tri-colored sweet corn. That's
right.
all it is.
Yeah. And in today's market, it's all what they call super sweet. So it's super sweet. It's been genetically modified to be better. To be sweeter.
I thought that was just branding down the road, super sweet corn. I thought,
no.
Is it super sweet or is it just sweet?
Well, that's the technology now, is to make super sweet corn. That's what it is.
Because I have a client of mine that always says, like, super sweet. He's like, isn't that a little excessive? Like, can't it just be sweet corn? So I'm gonna talk to him. I'm gonna tell him to watch this. So if somebody's out there and they're getting sold that it's peaches and cream corn, rest assured, it's not.
It's not peaches and cream.
Okay, so the argument's broken.
It's just a name.
But if you, right. But like you said, if that's what they want to buy, then that's what it is.
Fair enough. So on closing, we are going to talk about the community, the farming community, the Rockwood community as a whole. So, I look at, like, we're here, right? You're here against your will, okay? And, we come from different backgrounds, right? In town versus the country. And one thing, too, that I always admired about you guys was that people could come, and, like, if I wanted a tractor and if I needed the versatile, I know I could call you and I could take it without a doubt, right? You'd give me hassle for putting gas in it and I wouldn't do it. But that's how, but, like, even remember Lou Fontanato would always come and he would always be like, you'd be like, oh no, here he comes. And he'd come down the laneway and he'd drive his old tractor, his old pickup, and he'd borrow a piece of equipment. And you never said anything. It was always like, because you knew if you needed a hand, it would come back to you. And over the years, there was a lot of people that would phone and ask for certain things, and you'd say, no problem, here you go. You guys have a lot of machinery, and you are very generous with that. So, for us, I just wanted to touch on that, and the fact that I don't need anybody calling you asking you for a tractor, but it's just interesting. Is that just you guys? Is that the farming community? Is that Guelph Aramasa? Right? Is that what you guys are about?
Yeah.
Because it's not about every dollar or every penny of fuel. Like a truck, I could borrow your truck. I could ask you for your cottage, and you and Lynn. I remember when we had the baby. You're like, if you guys want to take a week up there, go ahead. That's community building. It's not just farming.
That's correct, and that's been one of my goals, is to make sure that everybody in the community gets along. That's how you build communities. Yeah. Right? That's how communities stay together.
Fair enough. And that's basically all I've got for you guys. So, did you have anything else that you wanted to add in? Sarah, did you have anything?
Just when you see us out in the community.
Ooh, good.
And you see our signs, know that we're all working for a common goal. Like, we've had I think one of the most dangerous things we do is probably driving on the road.
Yeah.
And that's only getting worse, right? With more and more people, and faster vehicles. So when you see these signs, there's a reason why we put them on there. Pass safely.
These are on the back of your equipment.
That's right. Yeah. So.
But I don't see these on the back of everybody's equipment.
No.
I don't think anybody has any these signs other than us. So
take a picture, share it. We have Instagram. Tag us in it. We want all of that. So it's important to us.
When you stop eating, I'll get off the road. Okay, so It is big. Like you will, I mean, you see it a lot. Like to me, it always reminds me of like long weekends, right? You're heading up north and there's like a whole bunch of cars. And I know you guys personally, if you do see a bunch of cars in your rear view mirror, you'll pull over and let them pass you, but you've got to get where you're going as well. Mm-hmm. Paul's biggest thing was, what's everybody in such a rush for, right? What's everybody in such a hurry for? So the key for everybody out there is to be patient. We have families too. And for these guys, when we talk about community and we talk about the work they're doing, like everybody's got to remember, if they're behind a tractor going to Wasaga Beach on a long weekend, you guys are going to Wasaga Beach. These guys are still driving the tractors. So I think that's important, and you are feeding families when you do it. So be patient, be kind, right? Mm-hmm. And we don't need people flipping the finger off. We don't need Paul getting angry, okay? Because he's a wrestler.
Lot bigger than you.
He's a wrestler. Kick your ass. He's gonna kick your ass.
It's just don't be in such a hurry to die.
Yes, because you can go through scary.
We've been involved in many of them.
And the tractors don't stop like a car, I guess, is the whole. And they're a lot bigger, so just be patient.
Be patient.
Be patient. Okay, guys, we're done. Thanks for having us, guys. I appreciate that. Okay, this is great.